Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Detox Talks podcast, brought to you by Dr. Morse's Healing Herbs. Whether you are a returning listener or tuning in for the first time, we are so glad you're here. This month, we're shifting gears a bit and diving into a special theme, winter wellness. So instead of focusing on a specific body system, we're covering a range of holistic health needs to help you stay balanced and strong through the colder months. I'm Colleen.
And I'm Jen. As winter approaches, it's the perfect time to prepare your body for the seasonal shifts. We'll be discussing winter preparedness, detox practices, and immune support. We'll be highlighting the differences between immunomodulators and immunostimulants, and exploring immune herbs like elderberry, echinacea, and traditional herbal recipes like fire cider. We'll delve into our ultimate immune formula and discuss the king of adaptogens, ashwagandha.
What's even more exciting is that today we have a very special guest. Rebecca of Everyday Alchemy Botanicals, and she is a passionate herbalist who some of you probably recognize as she's a major contributor to our social media content. She has her own line of herbal teas. I just had your stomach tea last night, and my husband and I loved it. They're crafted for supporting sleep, stress, digestion, and more at everydayalchemybotanicals.com. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Rebecca, for joining us today. And she's going to help us explore the difference between adaptogens and nervines. And we're going to define the unique uses in cases for short and long-term stress support, too. So this will be a great episode.
That's just the beginning. This episode is jam-packed. We've got something for everyone. We're going to be touching on climate considerations and how to make the right herb and dietary choices based on what's available in your area. We're going to be including some very fun and easy recipes for warming up and supporting immunity this winter, like adaptogen chai, elderberry syrup, and bone or veggie broth with herbs.
So stay tuned, everyone. We hope this discussion empowers you with the knowledge and tools to stay healthy and vibrant all winter long. Let's get started and explore these herbal essentials for winter wellness.
Yes, let's do this. So it is winter. Winter is coming, as they say. So December 21st of this year, and we will be going into the longest nights and the shortest days. With that darkness becomes this time of quiet and introspection. And so we've talked already in our previous podcast last month about clearing away the cobwebs of life with your physical space, your mental space, and within your body. Hopefully you followed our instructions and did your fall detox. We'll be talking a little bit more about detox in just a moment, but just wanted to tie in some of these winter themes. I always like to look to traditional Chinese medicine and just see what this time of year, because herbalism is all about the seasons. We are always using the seasons as a guide to what herbs we should be using to support our bodies and what is available to us. One that pops into my mind right now is rose hips. It's just really great and high in vitamin C. And if you're out hiking these days, at least by me, I have a lot of wild rose. And so there's just going to be this flash of red in this kind of bleak winter landscape. And that's going to be rose hips. Those are fun to collect and enjoy and make into tea for high vitamin C content. And with the traditional Chinese medicine perspective, the winter time is the time of the kidneys and the bladder. The element of winter is going to be water. And so with that water, it's how are the waters of your body doing and how are your kidneys functioning and how well are you moving things through? So take a look at your urine, as we always suggest here at Dr. Morse's, and see if there's any cloudiness. Jen can speak a little bit more to urine function. Cloudy urine can be an indication of your kidneys filtering well and finding sediment in your urine. And then there's clear urine and staying hydrated. One great thing we can do right away is start warming up your hands, creating heat and that fire and that chi in between your fingers. And you can take your hands and place them right here on your lower back where your kidneys and your adrenal glands live. For us, as we're preparing to present all this information, we're a little bit adrenal stimulated. So this feels really good and warming. It's always good to check in with this part of your body. If you're experiencing discomfort in your lower back, consider that you might be wanting to assess kidney health. And this is the time of year to really do that. And you might also notice that more this time of year. Those are just a few of the highlights of TCM winter wellness. In balance this time of year, keeping warm, staying quiet, sleeping well, being at home, looking within, and preserving and giving. I'm actually reading this out of one of my favorite books I've talked about before. It's Elson Haas's Staying Healthy with the Seasons. If you're out of balance this time of year, you might find yourself being overactive, having late nights partying, lack of rest and sleep, and frustration and hoarding. So if you're seeing that you're in one camp versus the other, this can help you balance out and find your peace this time of year. And so Jen's now going to dive a little bit more into the kind of detox perspective of wintertime. Jen?
You made a good point with the kidneys and how important they are and the overall theme of balance. I feel like balance comes into play in every season anyway, but the fluid balance being very important. And with detox, our bodies are always detoxing to a certain degree. There are periods of time where we might intuitively feel that we need to dig a little deeper and push it a little bit more. As Colleen mentioned, the solstice is coming up. So there's still time to, with fall leading into winter, if that's what time you want to take a break and hunker down, this detox cleansing is also a way to boost the immune system, especially in winter when we're really going to be hunkering down. Colleen's going to go into those immunomodulators and immunostimulants, the differences in what herbs and the purposes they serve, and we'll touch on some of the formulas too. There are some cases with your immune system that maybe you need that boost, that stimulation, and maybe you just need it more moderated, something a little bit more toned down. Maybe you're struggling to maintain those healthy inflammatory levels. Maybe you're struggling to find that cleansing fluid balance, because it is possible to cleanse too quickly. The lymph system, we can astringe and pull and tone on that a little bit too much, and it can be too intense. So that's where modulating that response and making sure the kidneys are filtering, like Colleen said, that cloudy urine, seeing some sediment, not just clear, is a good indication that the body's doing that a little bit more, that digging deeper that you're looking for. Of course, when you're drinking a lot of fluids and teas, like I've got mine right next to me, you're diluting it a little bit. You might not always see that filtration, but it's a good indicator how your body's doing. But as we're leading into these colder months, this is the time to consider where your detox is going to go. How can you support these filtration processes along with your immune response, just to make sure you're staying healthy, which this is still, detox is also good for moods, emotions, especially in winter. If you're not here in Southern Florida, like Rebecca and I are, you'll have that cloudiness, that seasonal affective problem where you'll need those boosts. So make sure you're supporting yourself leading up to this point for the winter. A certain amount of detox you got to keep up with lightly in the winter, I would say. Healthy foods. But yeah, if you want to talk about those modulators and immunostimulants.
So immunity, it's really tricky, right? Jen's talking about, where is your immune system at? Are you catching everything? Are you going out in the world and every interaction you have, you go home and you feel run down and suddenly you've got the sniffles and, oh, I caught something else? Or are you the type of person where everything is sensitizing? Maybe I'm talking about the same type of person here. I'm thinking about an underregulated immune system versus a hypersensitive immune system and how we can bring that back into balance, and everything in moderation. I just love these herbs that are modulants. They're so good at having the tightening and soothing, moistening in a lot of instances. And then they also can be both stimulating and contain antioxidants. So they're building as well as activating. Let's break down a couple and what that looks like, because now we're really approaching this season where the immune system is the most compromised. Who are your allies here? First, we'll talk about stimulants. And we did this last month, so I'm not going to go too deep in here, but I did want to just, as a friendly reminder, what is the difference between stimulating immunity and modulating immunity? So when you already have caught something, having the symptoms of the season where you're run down and congested, what herbs can you reach for? My number one herbs are echinacea and elderberry. Those are my go-tos. I also love keeping fire cider around, which we now happen to have that formula available. How do these specifically work? Without getting into too much detail, elderberry is got those anthocyanins, those beautiful purple, rich kind of blueberry vibes. That means it's very antioxidant rich and stimulating. So what they say about elderberry is that whether you are using it preventatively to keep yourself well, or once you feel that are under the weather, elderberry is something you can still reach for that can help stimulate immunity and activate immunity. So it's got this really beautiful balance of both kind of just being able to carry you throughout the winter. I always recommend an elderberry syrup, which we're going to be talking about at the end. That is a great herbal remedy that is good to keep on hand for your entire family. Kids love it, and everyone can be compliant with an elderberry syrup. And then you've got echinacea. And echinacea is a really special herb. It's from the northern continental United States. The native plains tribes that lived in the kind of plains states of the United States were the ones that introduced it to the colonizers. And it's just a really interesting story of how, of course, then it was exploited. Echinacea angustifolia is hard to cultivate. It's the one that you have to get out of the wild. Yes, it is over harvested and it's an at-risk herb. And so Echinacea purpurea is one that you can grow in your garden. And so it's easy to cultivate and has very similar active constituents. And just a fun fact about Echinacea is it's a great one to grow, and it's the roots, but the leaves also have some medicinal quality to them as well. And this is a really cool plant because when you take it, it's tingling, right? It tingles your tongue. And so it's got 14 different alkylamides that are present, at least 14. And those alkylamides are really interesting because they are stimulating. A lot of herbalists speculate that when you're washing the echinacea over these sensitive immune tissues in the back of your throat, you've got your first immune glands back there. You've got your tonsils, and they are highly reactive to foreign invaders, let's say, or invading organisms that aren't supposed to be there. And so when they feel that tingling from the echinacea, apparently it causes this immune response. It's just waking up immunity, stimulating immunity, and the call that we want to send to the body that, hey, no time for rest right now. I just was exposed to something and I want to be sure that I don't catch whatever I just was exposed to. So that's echinacea. And it also contains some antioxidants as well. It has isobutylamides. In echinacea, modulate both macrophages, the activity of macrophages, and the production of cytokines in response to those foreign invaders. So it's got just a lot of different action to it. And that's why it's just become this super well-known herb for immunostimulation. Then you've got fire cider. And so we create this formula for you. And Rebecca also just did a really great video on our Instagram channel. If you want to watch a how-to video on how to do fire cider, you just chop up a bunch of really hot things, ginger and horseradish. You want to speak to your fire cider a little bit, Rebecca?
I'm just showing you. I've got it here. I'm going to strain it out on the 28th. I'm patiently waiting.
What is in your fire cider?
So cranberries are in the grocery store right now. I added those and also some thyme, some jalapeno, serrano, habanero, orange, ginger, and then the classics, honey and garlic.
Yum. So good.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be delicious. The base is apple cider vinegar.
That's awesome.
We're on the fence here about apple cider vinegar. Jen, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
We get that question a lot. And for the purposes of detox, a lot of the questions we get surround vinegar, apple cider vinegar, supplementation, all of that. When we're focusing on cleansing the body, some of those things can be considered a treatment modality, which is not something we're doing. We're trying to get to the root cause of the problem. But for those who are in a bit of a maintenance routine, more of a supportive routine, these apple cider vinegar, fire cider, we're going to talk about some of those daily things when we get into the adaptogens and whatnot. That regular support, that's perfectly fine. Not really going against anything unnatural within the body, further congesting the lymphatic system or whatnot. We're still helping the body maintain a certain balance. But for deep cleansing, probably avoid it because you really want to experience what your body is trying to tell you. You want to be that good listener of your body. But with apple cider vinegar, when you're just getting ready to hunker down and wanting to, Rebecca, I can't wait to see what kind of draining you're going to get from your head with that fire cider you are making.
To be fair, it's got its place and it's not something I would recommend taking daily. It's not a tonic formula. It is an activator. It is something that you reach for when you are under the weather and you need to, those mucolytics, you need to liquefy mucus and drain, just what you said there. And it does have that really cool side effect of being a great lymphatic supporting formula because it is so draining. It's got all those hot herbs in it, which we just talked about. And those herbs are liquefying. They help move blood. They increase your heart rate. They help you sweat, which we talk about that third kidney being so important to regulating the fluids in the body. So it has its time and its place. Not something I would ever say to take fire cider every day. No, it's definitely like, this is winter. You need it in the moment. Yeah. I also recommend diluting it because vinegar straight is really intense on the stomach. So I always give a splash of water or juice with my fire cider formula when I'm taking it. And now we're moving into modulators. These are not so much, especially the adaptogens. I think there's a big misconception. We'll get into this in a moment, but adaptogens are not great to take when you're under the weather. They are builders. Some say that if you take an adaptogen once you have caught something, it can make that imbalance more deeply seated in the body because it's going to fortify whatever you give it. So I know a lot of you out there are probably drinking your daily reishi chocolate morning adaptogen blend, and I'm all for it. But once you catch something and are under the weather, you really want to clear out all adaptogens from your daily routine and just work on immunostimulation and supporting the kidneys, maybe a little bit of that fire cider. Now we're going to talk about why we use these modulators. We use them before you feel those seasonal imbalances. You are taking your adaptogens and your immunomodulators to build and fortify the immune system over time. Jen's going to talk a little bit about our ultimate immune formula and what that one contains and why it's a great modulator.
Yeah. As far as when you feel like you've caught something or your body's responding properly, you might feel like you need to fast or cut back on some herbal formulas and push it through. That's a lot of the message we have from Dr. Morse is push through. But in those modulating cases, the ultimate immune, that's one we've brought up multiple times in the webinars too, where this is like you were describing, like a daily tonic in this case. And versus something that's a stimulant. I believe my impression, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they act a little more slowly than stimulants. They have a longer lasting effect. They activate our innate immune system and help fortify it, but it's not that stimulating effect.
Rebecca's going to speak to the difference between an adaptogen and a nervine. She'll touch on this, but you aren't going to take an ultimate immune formula and feel it right away. You're not going to have it speed up recovery. It's something that you take to build.
Yeah. And absolutely. That makes sense. Incorporating it into your daily routine, especially leading up to winter in that maintenance protocol, this would be a good formula to incorporate with maybe the Fab4 or the daily detox. Pulsing the herbs 3 to 4 times a week. It doesn't have to be every day. And if you do end up catching something, that would be one. The adaptogens they're going to get into, back off a little bit, get that fire cider in there. Start making your own now like Rebecca's doing. So it'll be ready by winter.
That's right. Perfect. Yeah. Yes. Good point. And within this formula, I just have to mention, it's not only great for building before you approach this imbalanced season, this immune triggering season, it also is great for rebuilding after you get better from experiencing an immune response. It's got American ginseng in it. It's got deer antler in it. It's got schizandra. American ginseng specifically, when you are super depleted after you've caught something and you've been under the weather for a long time, this is one of those ones that's really incredible for bringing energy and vitality back to the body. I love Ultimate Immune for that. It might be too stimulating for some folks. You might try Ultimate Immune preventatively and find that you don't need to take it as often or maybe not as high of a dose because it's so building and fortifying. For some, it might be stimulating. Maybe avoid it before bed. Okay, and so we're going to talk about ashwagandha. Again, we talked about it a bit last month. I called it the king of adaptogens based on a really great talk that I listened to. It's because it's supportive not only for building the kind of the physical body, it's also really supportive for the mental body and the mental mind. So it's a really great adaptogen for both. So that's the one adaptogen herb that we do carry that's on its own. We now have ashwagandha both as a tincture as well as a capsule, like a high concentrated capsule. So you can definitely, and that's a great tonic herb daily. And I also love it in sleep formulas. Ashwagandha is a builder, but you would discontinue it when you're under the weather. Dr. Morse is great at formulating with adaptogens. He has so many beautiful adaptogens, some of my favorites in many of his formulas, and Jen's going to call out some of those right now.
Eleuthero. Did I say that right on the first try?
Or Eleuthero.
Okay. Eleuthero. Anyway, that's in the brain and nervous system's formula, the endocrine daily, adrenal support, and pituitary support. Ginseng, that's a word I can easily say, is in our male reproductive. Ultimate Immune, you're going to hear this formula a lot. Muscles by Nature. And then we have Schizandra, that is in Endocrine Daily, the male reproductive, Happy Caps, Prostate Health, Ultimate Immune again, and the High Energy. And all very good to rotate through protocols and whatnot. Again, not when you're feeling you need those stimulants, but Colleen, you can touch base, especially on that first one.
I know. Eleuthero is pretty amazing. Or Eleuthero specifically, which is in brain and nervous, endocrine daily, adrenal support, pituitary. Dr. Morse loves to put it in formulas. I love it too. It was heavily studied in the initial adaptogens coming to the people when the name adaptogen was first coined. Yeah, it was like the space race. There was the space race happening. It was 1958. Yeah, 1958 okay. Specifically, when Dr. Lazarev and his apprentice, Dr. Breckman, were out there in what is now Russia with the Soviet Union, and they were researching heavily these adaptogen herbs. They coined the phrase adaptogen, and were specifically researching this really cool area of the world that's right in the very far northeastern tip of China into Russia, called the Primorsky Krai. It's this really gnarly area that they say has potentially survived multiple ice ages. I heard this great talk by Guido Massé that he goes into all this great detail about how this region can survive really crazy weather and changes in the environment. It's also very unpopulated, so there's not a lot of interaction with humans in this zone. All these regions growing there, rhodiola, schizandra, raponticum, and eleuthero, as well as panic ginseng, are all found in the Primorsky Krai. Adaptogens are really good at building up the adaptive response and helping you adapt to the stressors of the world. These plants are adapting to a place that is extremely harsh to survive in. I think there's a really interesting doctrine of signatures going on there. Every adaptogen has different constituents that are working within the body and supporting the stress response. Rebecca's going to go into this in a moment, but we have these nuclear hormone receptors in our cells, glucocorticoid receptors. They are in your cells and have these receptor sites. What we think is happening is they fit into these little stress receptor sites in cells. If you are having an under-regulated stress response and you need more energy, they'll fit into that and give you a little bit of a corticoid or cortisol boost. The stress hormone goes into this glucocorticoid receptor and gives you that stress response. And so if you're more of a kind of sluggish, depressive state, let's say, and you need an oomph, the eleutherocyte will fit into that receptor and give you a zing. Because it's fitting into that receptor site, it blocks cortisol from attaching to that receptor site. So in a high stress situation, it will keep that cortisol from attaching and giving you the stress response. Rebecca has joined us today, and she specifically is going to speak to adaptogens, introduce them, and then what is the difference between an adaptogen and a nervine? Please tell us, Rebecca.
If you're listening in, obviously, at this point, you're probably familiar with the term adaptogen, but I feel like they get a lot more credit than nervines, which are really cool because they offer more short-term support. I often get this from people who start taking adaptogens. They don't like the fact that they have to take it regularly for a long period of time, and you may not notice those effects right away because, like we just said, they're interacting with multiple body systems and helping your body move back into balance. But nervines or nervines, whichever you want to call them, are a little bit different because they interact more directly with the nervous system, which offers you near immediate effects, which I think a lot of us moving into the winter or into the holiday season can definitely appreciate. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a recap. So adaptogens, like we said, are the group of herbs that help you adapt to stress. They work with multiple body systems. We talked about ashwagandha specifically. So it's thought to modulate cortisol levels within the nervous system, but also balance hormones within the endocrine system. It also interacts with the immune system. So that's just an example of the ways that it works with multiple body systems. So the really cool thing about nervines is that they fall into many different categories, and there is a lot of overlap. You've got your relaxing nervines, which tend to regulate neurotransmitters and can impact mood. And a good example here is my absolute favorite winter blues go-to, which is St. John's wort. It contains a compound called hypericin, which is thought to increase the availability of the happy chemicals or the feel-good neurotransmitters in the brain. It acts as a reuptake inhibitor. Then you've got your sedatives. So California poppy, hops, valerian for some people, passion flower, and even catnip has some mild sedative effects.
With St. John's wort, one of the traditional ways that people think about St. John's wort is how it's bringing sunlight into the dark places within you. Scientifically, when they study hypericin, is how it's literally the sunlight molecule, like it amplifies sunlight. They're actually using it in research studies where they're putting hypericin directly on skin cancer cells, exposing it to UV light, and it's killing the cancer cells. So
wow.
Yeah. So
Power
like
of
there's
nature.
just something about
that's so interesting.
And when you're making a St. John's wort infused oil, you have to put it in the sun. It does not turn that beautiful, bright neon red unless you give it ample sunlight. So I really do believe there's just this relationship between sun and St. John's wort and that hypericin molecule that is so profoundly uplifting in the body. Cal poppy I gave to my daughter when she was just a baby. What's cool about Cal poppy or California poppy is it's in the Papaver family. So it's in the same family as the opiate poppies, but it has incredibly safe for children, safe for colicky infants phytochemistry, where it's delivering similar alkaloids, but they come in this beautiful array that's safe for infants. And so with my teething baby back in the day, you could just rub a little bit on the gums of the Cal poppy and and also it's really wonderful sedative, like you were saying. I love it for that. And then there was catnip. That's another great one for kids. That's just like a go-to calming herb for children. I love it.
So the last category is Nervine tonics. Our Avena sativa is what comes to mind. Oat straw or milky oat tops.
They're the best.
Yeah, they are. I throw oat tops into everything. It's my favorite.
I think I've been researching about oat straw versus tops. Oat straw is really mineral rich, and I think of it more as a hair, skin, and nails herb. And then the tops specifically contain these beautiful mucousy starches, and those are specifically supportive to the nervous system, where they say that myelin sheath that insulates the nervous system, that the oat tops are indicated for helping support that myelin sheath.
You do have to decoct your milky oat tops. I did an experiment on that for people who didn't want to decoct them. If it doesn't turn a bright yellow, then it's probably not as effective.
I'm glad you guys are talking about all these herbs, because hopefully people will go back to the website and look under all the ingredients under these formulas, like the brain and nervous system, adrenal and whatnot, even Happy Caps, because Happy Caps contains oat straw. So I'm glad you guys are talking about that. We can really see, and Spasm Calm, to see the purpose, how these structured in the herbal formulas really are benefiting them and how they can incorporate it to the protocol. So
I'll leave you guys with this. I would just say that there is so much overlap and there are many different options. I feel like St. John's wort is very comforting and therapeutic. It is an uplifting herb, but to me, it feels more grounding compared to something like lemon balm. And so I think doing the research and experimenting to see what's best suited for you in that moment and based on your needs is so important. Sometimes I'll reach for lemon balm. Sometimes I'll reach for St. John's wort, but they're different situations.
Beautifully said, Rebecca. That's such a good point. You really need to listen to your body. It's really all about how these herbs are interacting with you and what are your allies. Lemon balm, such a good one.
Cleansing through seasons.
Yeah.
Our body goes through detox seasons too. And we might need to make adjustments. Lemon balm, St. John's wort, that can change depending on how you've used these immunomodulators and stimulators and adaptogens. At certain points, you're going to see a certain amount of growth and change after cleansing for a while. So understanding herbs is so empowering.
What we're trying to do here with y'all is not just say, here's a formula, take it. We want you to get the herbs. We want you to know what's in it and why. We want you to isolate those herbs. We want to help you find your herbal ally. And I think Rebecca really hit on a good point here. Find one thing. I just spoke with one of my consulting clients about this. Just find one herb and work with it. See how it feels in your body and get to know it from there. So we're now doing a milk thistle capsule. It's a highly concentrated milk thistle extract. And that's a wonderful hepato. We're switching gears here because it's a liver herb. It's not a nervine, but it's an incredible hepato restorative and hepato protective. So it's restoring and protecting the liver. And if you have any liver imbalance, try it and just stick with it and see how it feels. And before you get too in the weeds with all these different formulas and all these different herbs.
Same thing with the overlap. You've got holy basil, gotu-kola, schizandra, licorice root here that interact with your nervous system and also other parts of your body, which makes them powerful and potent if you're looking for something that is going to support you in the long term, but also offers you short-term support. Holy basil is my sweet love. I love holy basil so much. It's such a powerful herb. And during the holiday season, if you need a moment of mental clarity and stress support, that might be one to try.
How about licorice root? We get asked about licorice root a lot. So what are your thoughts for you? on licorice root. It's often related to imbalances in blood pressure, which I tie into fluid imbalances. Looking back at the kidneys, of course, winter is the time for water imbalances, kidneys, even that fear that our kidneys can hold on to. Free range on comments on licorice root, how it can benefit people in this winter season. We get a lot of questions on licorice root, when it's appropriate, when it's not. So going back to when to use certain things for the immune system, when is licorice appropriate?
One thing we have to say about licorice is it's contraindicated with high blood pressure. Unless you find the glycyrrhizin removed, which is called deglycerized licorice, which they do have for folks that have stomach upset. Yeah, gastrointestinal kind of upset, too much acid. Licorice is incredible, but if you have high blood pressure, you can't take it. And so you would want to get the deglycerized, which you can get capsules of that. I love licorice, but I think it is dose specific, and it is maybe more of a short-term use.
I use licorice more for gastrointestinal support, which is why it was in my gut soother blend that you and your husband tried. I don't rely on it as much as an adaptogen.
Licorice, I think, Rebecca, you use it beautifully in your tea blends. It's a harmonizing herb. It's very sweet. Folks assume that it tastes like the candy, and it does not. So if you are immediately repulsed by the thought of licorice in something, I highly recommend you try one of Rebecca's teas, or just try licorice. Try ordering some licorice root from Star West Botanicals or Mountain Rose Herbs, and try it as a decoction. It's very sweet, but when you combine it with those more bitter or sour herbs, it's a beautiful harmonizer. It really brings together the flavors in this really beautiful way. So it's in a lot of formulas for that reason. Agreed. In low doses, just to harmonize and make the formula more tasty.
Yeah. You'll notice it as a sweetness on the back of your tongue is how I always describe it. If you don't use an overbearing amount, it tastes like you have honey in a tea blend without actually having to add it. Just a sprinkle.
Doesn't affect the glycemic index. It's pretty cool. Sweet without sugar. Yeah. And then you mentioned holy basil as a nervine adaptogen. And one of the great claims to fame for all of our mint family members is they're high in volatile oils. And there's more and more research finding that those mints, when you take them internally, are helping to relax the vagus nerve, which is connected to most of your major organs. So when you are drinking any type of minty tea, as you were saying, Rebecca, that kind of right away, you're starting to feel that relaxation because it is interacting with the vagus nerve, and it makes me want something right now. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for this beautiful kind of picture that you've drawn about the difference between adaptogens and nervines and long-term versus short-term care for the nervous system. We're talking about the winter blues and how we can uplift the system and give us a little bit of a kick and some self-love, or I should say a boost, not a kick, supporting yourself these winter months when things can get rough around the edges. Now we're going to move on to holiday feasting and the detox diet. Jen, take it away.
I love the body and what it can do. It's very amazing, but I'm really looking at the digestive system and the impacts foods have on our health. And just like with the herbs we've been talking about and how there's a lot of overlap, a quote I read recently in a book, some people who are listening might know Steve Meyerowitz and his books on digestion and so many other things on health and detoxification. But there's a quote in there that says, man cannot duplicate the wisdom of nature. So just like with herbs, we need to consider that as far as our foods and our food choices. And of course, in the holidays, there's a bit of an inner turmoil between all these amazing foods that we might be used to eating versus detoxing and making sure we're not bogging ourselves down further. So just really trying to make sure we make the appropriate choices. There's always a better food choice out there. If you're not doing a deep detox, fasting or anything, and with winter, that's probably the best time to build this body up anyway. He compared it to a symphony. A symphony contains thousands of notes, but it might only have 12 chords or so much. And think about that with your food's nature and how it's built. We have all these foods, but we're not able to orchestrate that intricate balance, the rhythm and the chemicals, the timing, the amounts within our body. That's an innate intelligence of our GI tract, the chemicals and the hormones. So again, be a good listener of your body when it comes to your health and your food choices, time of year, your goals, your location, what's available to you, what's in season. You're probably going to see a lot of these squashes, root vegetables, things that, they need to be cooked to make them edible. So we're not going to shame you on your food choices. It's just being aware. Your body's going to tell you if it likes it or not. So just being aware of your food choices, how you combine them. That is what I will emphasize the most. Probably the 80-20 diet that 80% raw, 20% cooked diet around this time and through the winter, gearing up to cleanse maybe as winter starts to close out into spring. That's probably best, where you're eating mostly raw throughout the day, fruits and veggies, what you can get available and seasonal. The veggies, lightly steaming, lightly baking, make the best choices you can, organic, or just wash them really well if you can't get it. I know on the holidays, one of the favorite dishes that people ask for are my roasted veggies, where it's just sweet potato, parsnips, turnips, carrots, a touch of high quality olive oil, and then fresh herbs and dried herbs like oregano, thyme, rosemary. Get those in there. And I have to make so much that it's just, that's always the one thing to go and never any left over. Enjoy yourself. The companionship of food and people is very important. Those are mood lifters. That's important in winter.
100%.
So yeah. And there's plenty of time to detox. Just make sure you're avoiding those highly acidic foods that are going to bog you down. Food combining, proteins, starches. If you're combining those, that's a bad thing. The body's going to start breaking down probably those starches a little bit first, then the proteins. It just really slows you up. So just keep your food combinations. Be very aware, very conscious. Eat happy. Don't have arguments around the table. Eat happy. That helps your digestion. Go for a walk afterward.
They say communal cooking releases oxytocin. Yeah, what you're saying is really important this time of year. We're talking about how winter is a time where people get the blues. It's just inevitable. I feel it. You really need to be gentle with yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. If the detox protocol is not working for you, if you are cheating, please don't be hard on yourself. That is not the goal. The goal is to give yourself a lot of love and be like, I can detox later. And that's what spring is for too. Honestly, spring is that time where we come out of our cave. If you really think about humans historically, we gathered up a bunch of stuff in the fall, we put it away in storage, and we ate it all winter long. A lot of preserves, a lot of dried meats. I hate to say it. I know that meat is not really what we do here, but I'm talking cavemen here, people, right? We've had to just survive off of what we had and what could keep over winter. And then spring is that time of year when we can emerge, and the spring greens, all those edible greens that start to just pop up everywhere around you. You just start consuming massive amounts of those and all of your raw fruits and vegetables. And you will be able to bring yourself back to that restored state of balance. So please be gentle with yourself.
Yep. That's a good thing. We do want fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. But when the winter brings the earth into that really peaceful mode, that really quiet mode, rebirth happens. That's a great time, a great way to think about it. Another rebirth, another stage for your body, for your cleanse.
So Jen, thank you very much. She's taking these recipes, creating recipe cards, and you'll be able to click the link in the podcast description, and it'll take you to a downloadable PDF of all these recipes so that you can use them yourself and enjoy them. I think Rebecca's got a really good one coming up here.
Oh, I have an adaptogen chai recipe, and it uses rhodiola root. The rhodiola root that I use is shaved more than dense chunks of root. So that may be why I love it so much, because it's slightly bitter. As a stimulating adaptogen, you get a little bit of the bitterness that resembles that black tea without the caffeine. Get a little energy boost, right? But I add it to the normal chai spices: cinnamon, cloves, ginger, cardamom, allspice. I recommend giving it a try. If rhodiola isn't your thing for one reason or another, you could use ashwagandha, have it at night. That would be delicious.
Love that.
Or even astragalus might be really good in there. Try it out. Swap out the main adaptogen however you see fit. Because these are all rooty, tough shell things, you're going to want to decoct them. So I would start by decocting the rhodiola root for, let's say, 5 minutes, and then add all the chai spices in. I know some people will add their milk in first. You really have to watch it if you do that. Otherwise, you start to get those particles coming to the top. You don't want it to curdle. This is my way. I add it at the end. Let everything heat up for a minute or two. Be careful that it doesn't boil. Then add sweetener if you'd like, and sprinkle a little bit of nutmeg over top. And it's
delicious. Yes. And of course, this is your milk of choice. You can use coconut or almond milk if you're wanting some, I guess I won't say cow's milk, but I drew a lot of cow's milk. And I love adding, believe it or not, depending on the herbs, maybe adding a little bit of honey. I love to add a tablespoon to my cup of sesame oil or coconut oil to my chai recipe. Super nourishing. I love it. Especially with the Tulsi. You mentioned putting Tulsi in your formula. So Tulsi with something about the rooty chai flavor with the Tulsi, adding sesame oil is so delicious.
I love how you two are fancy. I'm just like, give me the two straight.
I do these demos
I like the
in
bitter
live
stuff.
classes, and I really like the wow factor. An herbal teacher of mine, Trinity Ava, is the one I can give the credit for on that one. She was all about getting your fats in when you take in your herbs. And so she always added a bunch of fats to everything. So yummy.
But yeah, this does sound really good. It probably smells amazing.
Yeah, so we have a few more recipes here. So you can also make a syrup. Rebecca produced a beautiful syrup reel on our Instagram channel, so go check that out. But you essentially are making a very strong tea of elderberry. I usually put the elderberries in and do an overnight soak so that that softens up the berry itself. And then in the morning, I'll immersion blend it. I'm a huge immersion blender. I always am all about breaking up those cell walls and getting as deep into the plant material as you can. So I'll immersion blend it, and then it's a 1-to-3. So 1 part herb to 3 parts water. And you're going to decoct that, which is a slow simmer. And you're going to do that for 2 to 3 hours. So really, the more you cook it down, and I do a partial lid so that steam can be released, but I don't lose all my volatile oils. And then you cook that down until it's a nice strong tea. And then it's really just equal parts honey to tea. So if you end up with 2 cups of tea, you're going to add 2 cups of honey. That is very sweet, and you can reduce the honey a little bit if you'd like. You can, and I know this isn't compliant with Dr. Morse's, but this is a traditional herbal preparation where, to compensate for the fact that once you remove some honey, it's no longer shelf stable, you can add a little bit of brandy to keep it from turning. And you can also keep it in the fridge if you don't want to add any brandy. With the elderberry syrup, 1 tablespoon 2 times a day for an adult, and a child's dose, you would reduce the dose for children. This is great for kids going to school as preventative, as well as once they potentially are under the weather. I love elderberry syrup. Again, it really carries you through the season. And then we're talking about broths. We really encourage you to make a lot of broths this time of year. We want you to be warm. The raw diet is very cold, and it's a very cold time of year for those of us in Florida. You really do want to give yourself some heat. Of course, you can make the teas. We've got a lot of great tea options at Dr. Morse's. Rebecca's got her whole everyday alchemy botanicals.com, where you can get her teas. And so drinking warming teas throughout the day is lovely, but also we really encourage you to make some broths. So you can do a veggie broth, where I have a crock pot going on my counter all the time. One thing I'll do is load it with vegetables. Anything you've got, like parsnips, and carrots, onions, garlic, celery root, and burdock roots. And you add in a bunch of awesome adaptogens. So you'd add in reishi and astragalus, cotinopsis, and goji berry, seaweeds, burdock, dandelion, ginseng, cordyceps, shiitake, turkey tails. You really can get super creative. You've just made this super nourishing adaptogenic broth that you can be sipping throughout the season. For those of you who are comfortable with it, we also are totally fine with a bone broth. So whether you're sourcing chicken bones or beef bones or whatever is local to you, you can add some bones to this as well. The longer you cook this, the more those nutrients and the minerals get extracted from the bone and into the broth. And you're already doing this with our Ultimate Immune formula, right? Because the Ultimate Immune has the deer antler in it, which is derived from animals, and it is a bone. And so we're doing the same thing here with a bone broth, and you can pull out some of those natural oils and minerals, and that's really going to help you stay fortified and strong throughout this colder time of year. Okay.
If you've got a family member cooking a turkey and you're not eating it, just say, give me the carcass.
Yes.
I just want the bones.
Seriously, that's a really good point, Jen. All right. I don't know how you all are feeling, but I am feeling very full. This was a wonderful podcast. We hope you listeners had a lot of great takeaways today. Rebecca, it was such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for letting me be part of this. This was fun.
Super fun.
Yep, we had a great time.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Yep, absolutely. Always. We look forward to doing this again, honestly. Very satisfying podcast. And hang in there, everyone, through the winter.
We'll be talking about some more great tips and tricks to get us through this cold time of year and to maintain your detox protocols. And yes, as always, we love you and we are so grateful for your support. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.